Let us continue with my guest who's been here before, and we are always happy to have her. She is the leader of the ILP on one hand. She's also, her day job is that of an attorney, a criminal attorney. Rekha Ramjit, I thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning. Always good to see you.
And it's always my pleasure to be here. And I like how you described it, my day job,
Yes.
that of attorney. But you made a slight error just before I came on.
Which
You
one was
referred
that?
to me as doctor.
Oh,
Thanks
Lord.
for
Yes.
for the added thing, but no, I'm just plain Rekha Ramjit.
Well, I mean, I could have handed you silk. I could have done that.
I know. Isn't
All right.
that something?
Oh, well, that's another talk show.
Yeah.
But let me say thank you so much for being here. I'm so happy to have you here. We are all consumed, as you know, with the events. We've got a number of topics here this morning, but right now let's just deal with where everybody's locked into for the past 9 days. Minister McDonald, she was dismissed primarily because of the attendance of Mr. Burke at her swearing in. Innocent until proven guilty is at the base of justice.
Mm-hmm.
In Trinidad, sometimes it seems, and sometimes in parts of the world, it seems as though one is guilty until proven innocent.
Mm-hmm.
I approach this not from the political side of it, not from the actions of the Prime Minister, but from the outpouring of social and conventional media, which by their direct allegations or inferences condemned Mr. Burke for what was not proven in a court of law. You are a criminal attorney. You have a number of clients who have gone through the system and been exonerated or been freed. My question is this outpouring of derogatory inferences, is this the price we pay for the friends we keep, the environment we come from, or the fact that those enforcing the law may have made justifiable mistake in arresting me and then finding out that they erred?
Well, first of all, yes, to all of those, and then a little bit more, because the society is a function of what our leaders make it. And in this particular case, our political leaders have done a really a good job on our psyche with regard to how we deal with people. But let me state my position, right? This is my personal position with regard to that fiasco. First of all, Mr. Burke, I don't know him. I've never met the gentleman. I've only seen him in the newspaper, and I hold no brief for him, Malik McDonald, the PNM. I hold no brief for anyone. And he was arrested under what I would call a stillborn act. That was a stillborn act.
State of emergency.
Impotent, as it were. He was arrested under that act. He was never proven guilty of anything. So the man has good character as far as our judicial system goes. But what bothers me about this entire incident, and let me say up front, I absolutely disagree with Dr. Rowley for firing Marlene McDonald on that issue. I know there are probably other issues, but I'm dealing with that issue.
Yes.
Yes. And I'll tell you why. He's a hypocrite of the highest order, along with all our politicians. Because I am sure if you were to go and look over all of the tapes, etc., when Malik McDonald needed to win that constituency, who do you think would have worked with her? These are the people who form 80% of the population who would have assisted her and put in her where she is. If Mr. Burke was in the habit of wearing a $10,000 suit and having drinks at the Hyatt, there may have been a different approach to him, because I want to say that there are a lot of unproven allegations against people in high places in this country, and they will be more than welcome where Mr. Burke was, castigated for being. They would be more than welcome. And so this country suffers from a kind of hypocrisy that we need to get on. We have a kind of ignorance. We've developed an ignorance of what is happening around us, and we are hypocritical when it comes to these issues.
It's a very good point. It's a very good point you made. There are many white-collar allegations, many white-collar crime allegations addressed to many prominent people in our society, yet they are not so vilified. Yeah, and the question becomes, what is the difference here?
So what is the basis for firing Marlene McDonald? I don't know what Dr. Rowley's basis was, but I have to say is, if it is what the newspaper has presented, that is because she allowed one of her constituents to accompany her to a function in the president's house, and let me say as well, there are still questions hanging over the president's receipt of certain rental monies for house, etc. That has never been properly answered. I am going to be as frank as I can this morning. As I said, I hold a brief for no one. And therefore, why is it that an ordinary citizen who at this point in time, as far as the justice system and the country is concerned, is a man of good character, why is it because people want to label him as what you call a community leader, which is equivalent in their minds to a gang leader? Let us be very frank. Why is it he can't accompany her? He's not been proven guilty. I am sure if one of those past ministers or one of those present ministers or one of those businessmen who didn't donate millions of dollars to the political coffers of any of the two major parties, if they were invited and they went along in their spiffy suits, nothing would come of it.
107.7 in the morning time. The voice you're hearing is that of a criminal attorney, Rekha Ramjit, also the head of the ILP. We are talking about the situation as it refers to Mr. Cedric Burke in this case. A lot has been thrown at him. And like I said, as a criminal attorney, I ask you this because there are many others, I am sure, who suffer the same fate. Here is the problem. How prohibitive is the libel bar to bring redress to someone not convicted yet demonized by inference? And can his request from the police commissioner for a statement as to whether in fact he is a person of interest reasonably expect an answer?
Well, first, there are two parts to that question. The first thing, he ought to get an answer as to whether or not he's a person of interest. And not only that, on what basis?
But if it does that not interfere with the police going about their investigation if they had to reveal something like that?
No, it should not, because obviously he's not the one who's going to go to the police station and say, listen, I hear that you are investigating me for a crime number A, B, or C, and let me give you the information. Obviously, he's a person of interest because they're investigating him for something. So that letting him know would not in any way affect their investigations at all.
No, but okay, and I just want to piggyback just before we go into the second part of that two-part question. When you made reference to the Prime Minister, a difference must be given because he's the head of the National Security Council.
Yes.
He's seen information that he knows. One does have to give the avenue that he knows some stuff we don't know, or some stuff that he cannot put in the public domain.
Obviously, there's some stuff that he cannot put into public domain. However, in this particular case, Mr. Burke's character has been assassinated. Not so? It has been assassinated, and therefore he is entitled to know why. Because obviously, other persons have information about him that is not in the public domain that may not even be available to him.
Yes.
So if my character is being assassinated, I would want to know why.
All right, so let me come to the second part of the question. I think if we were on the same page that was not answered, the libel bar being so high.
Right. The only problem with that, the only problem with that is that I don't think from what has been out in the public domain that one can actually pinpoint the person who made the first utterance that made it a public issue. And you would have to find out who is the person who made the first public utterance, because that is the person you have to go after. They would be the person who disseminated this lie about you. Because remember, libel, defamation, you have to prove one, that what was said is a lie, which as far as I see from what is in the newspaper, he will have no difficulty proving. But you also have to prove that that has tarnished your character, which it has done. But who has made the statement? Can he identify who exactly made the statement that resulted in this vilifying, as you call it, of himself?
Would you say that the media has been judicious in repeating a lot of the loose things that are said on the internet where there is no accountability? Have you seen any case of that, or would you say they have been as judicious or as careful as they can be?
Well, I'm not so sure what was their source of information with regard to that, and therefore I would not want to make a comment because before one can say whether they were judicious or not, one would have to determine, or one would have to be informed of where they got their information.
I, like you, carry no brief for anyone here. I do find it passing strange strange, like I said. At the end of the day, suspicions can be where it is, investigations can be where it is. But if I'm going to be if I'm going to be innocent until proven guilty, I find it more than a stretch. With some of the allegations and accusations that's being levied. Because this gentleman cannot get his character back.
No, he cannot. But for one thing, if his first notification of this statement was from a daily newspaper, then that's his starting point. That's his starting point. And then the newspaper may then say, well, I have received this information from me, but his first notification of it came from a newspaper, then that's where he starts.
There are many people who have been wounded who would find it very strange that I'm going down this line of saying innocent until proven guilty because they've been wounded, and they go like, listen, you don't want to stick with the law. But I believe you have to stick with the law because today for you and tomorrow for me, there is also the question of someone who's so maligned and their future opportunities jaundiced by this public cloud can be pushed into nefarious activities just to survive.
Yes.
Because there is no legal way they can go about trying to live. So that, again, contributes to the problem we are trying to attack.
But you know something, Mr. Bishop, and to your listeners, I am sure that many, many people would vociferously, vehemently disagree with me on my position on this. Because if you read the statement coming out of, let us say, the UNC, for example, who says, she has to explain why this man was there. It's a saying, okay, Dr. Rudal Muniland is under investigation. I read that in the newspaper. So does he have to explain where he is at any point in time? Does he have to explain why he's in Parliament? He doesn't. Do you understand what I'm saying? People are going to disagree with me and say, well, you are encouraging criminality. But I say, as you do, that unless we get things straight in the system, in our judicial system, unless we recognize a man is innocent until proven guilty, we will always give the powers that be the opportunity to be malicious in their approach with people whom they don't like or who they disagree with for some reason or the other. I recall when the bail amendment bill was being passed, where they said that you, once you have a pending matter before the court and you have a gun matter and you are now charged with gun, you are denied bail.
Yes.
And I made the point then, and this is an example of what I'm saying, that at that point in time, a man or woman who was of good character was denied bail. He did not have to have a conviction. She did not have to have a conviction. And this is a further extent of the same thing. It is an extension, of the same thing. So we continue to treat people who have good character, and we define good character in this society as those persons who have not had an offense recorded against their name, a criminal offense recorded against their name. And we continue to treat them as if they are criminals. As a matter of fact, I have a particular client who their list of pending matters, I don't deny that, about 18, but he has not had one conviction. But at the top of the form, they have known felon. Yes. But he's never had a conviction. You understand?
Yes, there is also something to be said, someone who is the police are familiar with.
Yes.
Exactly what does that mean? They can be familiar with me.
He is, the normal phrase you hear is, he's well known to the police.
Yeah, what does that mean? There are many who are going to answer to this. My guest, by the way, in case you just locked in, the unmistakable voice of Rekha Ramjit, the criminal attorney and also the head of the ILP, my guest here this morning. There are many people who are going to answer for this uninvited guest being allowed on the presidential compound. But how much, in conclusion of this topic, how much of this public outcry do you think is fueled by where Mr. Burke comes from?
A lot. Again, as I say, I've only read where he comes from the newspaper. I don't know Mr. Burke. And if Mr. Burke is listening to this program, he'll wonder, who is she? But the point is, we have stopped treating all our citizens as equal in this country when it comes to treatment by the state and state bodies. We have stopped doing that completely. And if you belong to a particular class because of earnings or where you live, you get different treatment. Let us take the solving of crime. If you have a certain level of income, and if you come from a particular place, somehow the police is able to arrest and charge somebody within 24 or 48 hours. If you come from a different place, sometimes you don't even hear of the offenses that have been committed.
Yes.
So yes, I have to say that is where he's from. And I want to say again, and I hope Trinidad and Tobago is listening to this, both the PNM, and I beg to allow me just one moment of politics in here. Both the PNM and the UNC are guilty of this, using these persons to put themselves in power and then treating them that like they are second-class and third-class citizens. Why can't a man from Sealot or Laventille or Barrackpore or wherever, why can't he be in the president's house taking a photo with the president? Why?
Yeah, my only objection there is that you should be invited. But I agree.
But there
with
was
you.
an invitation
to
if
Mr.
it
Dopwell.
is.
An invitation to Mr. Dopwell. Mr. Dopwell invited
I want to
Mr.
disagree
Burke,
with you. If I am the member of parliament and I say, come with me,
yes,
that's an invitation. And there can be no higher invitation than that.
I never questioned him being taken up to the presidential place where the swearing-in took place. What I did say, he had no right because he did not have an invitation
In
being
the
allowed
first
on the
place?
compound.
Well, let
on the
us-
compound because she came in and she met him in the waiting room.
30 seconds.
Yes,
Let's take it the next step. Then why was he allowed in?
but that is my point.
He was allowed
To me,
in by
that's
not
my
himself.
point.
He
That's
didn't
what-
go in there and say, you have to let me in.
To
Somebody
me,
let him
that
in.
is where the revolution starts. Somebody in security, somebody in the guard and emergency is going to answer the question, how this man got on the compound in the
Yes.
first place.
And I know there must be special security for the president. I have no difficulty
is.
with that at all. But come on.
Hello. All right. We walked through that one. We've got a couple of hoops here lined up. You made a mention a moment ago about the bail amendment bill.
Yes.
I do want to go there because you're a criminal attorney yourself, and this is directly in your avenue. The whole question of having the choice of having a juryless trial. It is not that it is now being discussed that it is the way to go. It is an option available to an accused. Yet there seems to be a hue and cry about this option being given to accused. Why is there? Do you, first of all, how do you feel about that aspect of it? The area where a judge, you can opt for a juryless trial.
If I was somebody before the court, I would want a jury.
Fair enough.
I would want a jury because you have 12 persons who are going to come together to make a decision.
Rightly
as
so,
opposed
but
to
that's a choice.
That's a choice.
Right.
But I want to say something further, and this is why people have attorneys. Because attorneys are a little more aware of what's happening in the system. Let us face it. Our judges, after having practiced for a number of years, move in a particular circle. They are far removed from what actually happens in Sealots and Laventille and Barrackpore and Toko, etc. My point is, when you have a jury of 12 persons, they can more relate and they can listen to the evidence and think, well, yes, that's likely to happen. I have sat in many, many courts where I listen to a statement being made by a judge or a magistrate and concluded they don't have a clue what they're talking about because they have never lived in that area and they have never walked in those people's shoes.
I am in concert with you on that. I am also saying that you as the attorney should be able to counsel the accused and say,
Correct.
listen, if you do this, this is this, just as you just did me.
Yes.
However, it is only a choice. And I am not understanding the objection, and please, I may be a little slow on a Sunday morning. What is the objection to one having the choice?
Right. There's no objection for me. However, one has to be sure that the person who is making that choice has been properly counseled.
Yes.
And there's no pressure from the bench. No, I don't want anybody to go and say, Ms. Ramjit, say that the bench just pressure you. Right? But you, as a layman, for the first time, let us say, even for the third time being before the court, this judge sits up there in his robes, right, or her robes, and you are down there in a little square box, and he's suggesting to you and talking with authority of what is the best thing for you.
So one would be well advised to go for a jury trial, is what we are saying.
I am saying that, but I'm saying also one must ensure that accused has counsel who can properly counsel him as to what the the benefit, the pros and cons are.
Because, for a number of infractions where folks are in remand, folks are saying, for instance, one, it should clear that up, but in case...
No, it wouldn't.
Okay, then there's the other argument that you have a lot of attorneys who are afraid of not being able to eat a food to get, to get their cases.
80 to 90% of the persons in remand yard or MSP, as the case may be, use legal aid.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing great about legal aid fees. And it's coming 4 or 6 months late. And now that the legal aid don't have a board, it's not coming at all. So let's not go down the eat a food road at all when it comes to criminal matters.
Okay.
That is applicable to civil matters and the 5% of people who are able to pay their fees from the criminal. So that is not the issue at all.
It is not the issue, but just because you think it's going to be unfair to those who are going through the system to have a one-man judge-jury situation.
And I want to say why. And the reason is you have 12 people of a different kind of background. We must not forget the origin or the genesis of the jury system. 12 persons of your peers.
Yes.
I don't think that the judge can be considered a peer.
But you can have
accused.
one person who is in this group who is totally ignorant to the law, as you said, that happens to be just a regular layman, not understanding that, and he can block the system equally, could he not?
He is not required to rule on the law. The judge gives them the instructions on the law. He's required only to determine the facts before him, whether they are true or false. He's not applying the law. The judge tells them how to apply it. But it's like you, Mr. Bishop, if you come here and you said, I am 15 years old, and somebody else says, no, I think he's 17, and this is the reason why. The jury decides which they want to believe, unless there's some documentary evidence. So what I'm saying is, they determine, when they hear all the witnesses, who to believe and who not to believe, and what is more reasonable and practical, and given Trinidad and Tobago, what is likely to be the truth, and the judge then applies the law.
I love the counsel given this morning, as well as I'm sure an accused would love it equally, but just to conclude, you are not against it, you just see that there are pitfalls in going that direction, am I correct?
Yes, and I want to clear up one thing.
Yes.
The statement that it would reduce the number of matters.
In remand, yes.
How so? Not so at all.
Because the argument is that there are a lot of cases there that can be expedited with because they are not cases that really necessitate a jury.
Right, but the jury doesn't take any time. The interaction is between the defense attorney, the prosecution, and the judge. The jury sits and listens, and the only extra time that the jury take is the day that we address the jury. But I cannot see a system where defense attorney is not allowed to address the judge and prosecution isn't allowed to address the judge. So where's it? The only time that there's a delay is if a member of the jury cannot attend on a day.
Or moving the jury in and out in case some things are said or someone wants a sidebar with the judge.
Well, how long does that take? I mean, 15 minutes. What
is the cost in that? Wait for me, the cost of having a jury trial as against having a judge.
I'm not sure what the cost is with regard to, the major cost would be the productive time that a jury will have to spend in court as opposed to their jobs if they are employed.
And when
that
they
is the major cost.
Whenever they sequestration.
We don't have sequestration in Trinidad. The last sequestration was Chedi. And probably for Abu Bakr. We don't have sequestration in Trinidad. That's a fallacy. They go home at the end of the day and they come back the next morning for 9:30 to 10.
On to the job. Attorney Rekha Ramjit is my guest this morning. It is 9 minutes away from the top of the hour, reminding you that Conrad Enel will be joining us at about 11:15. We are going to deal with the question of serving. But talking about serving, we had two justices resign from the JLSE. As an attorney and member of the Law Association, do you see a problem with the resignations as it relates to retired Justices Stallmeyer and Hammersmith from the Judicial and Legal Service Commission, when, according to a spokesman for the president, he is already working on their replacements? Do you see a problem? Is somebody crying something that is not a problem?
Well, I have to laugh because we say that we have a judicial system that isn't working. And the powers that be, every action they take in the past couple of weeks have been designed, in my mind, whether deliberately or negligently so, or recklessly so, to further destroy the judicial system. If it is the majority of persons in the who practice in the judicial system suggest that the best thing for the judicial system is for the Chief Justice to resign, then he should do so. But your question was really about the two persons who have resigned. They obviously have their reasons that has not been made public, and I would not want to guess what those reasons were at all.
I'm not going to let you slide on that, and I know you never come here to slide, but I'm going to just pull that up right there. When you said that the Law Association voted, was it 256? Yes, they voted for the Chief Justice to resign, but the Constitution does not cede that power to the Law Association.
No.
They can say what they want.
And it is, absolutely, and I said so on the last time. But if these are the stakeholders, and this is their opinion, it's like a referendum. If you have a referendum on any issue, then the referendum does not have the power of legal force.
But 256 to 100 is not exactly unanimous, is it?
No, I did not say it was unanimous.
Okay.
I said the majority. And then you have persons who are outside of the legal fraternity who would have stated an opinion on that. My position is, if we are having so much infighting, apparent infighting, then it can be no good for the judiciary at all. And by extension, let's say the COP elections. Great thing was going to happen. Then you have to set up infighting. It's not going to help them at all. So my point is that two persons have resigned. Their reasons have not been made public. And of course, the president is doing what he's supposed to do, right?
Which is to find a replacement.
Which is to find a replacement.
You are the leader of the ILP. So I've got 2/3 of your membership that say, listen, we really not too cool with Ms. Rekha Ramjit and this thing here. She should resign. Well, how would you respond to that?
I would resign. I would happily resign, because if the thing is, when you accept office, and we often forget that, all our members of parliament forget that, and that is why they vilify in Mr. Burke. They are the ones who put you there. They are the ones who voted for you to get there. And if they're about and you went in by a majority vote, didn't you? I went in by a majority vote. So if the majority now come and say we are unhappy with how you are handling this situation, then I must listen to the majority.
But sometimes leadership is defined by going against the grain. You know, it's not every time.
It is not going, sorry, Mr. Bishop, it's not going against the voice of your own membership.
Members of the Law Association who don't have the power to remove the Chief Justice.
Yes.
The Constitution does not give them that power.
I didn't say that they had the power. My point is...
I'm reiterating for a
right.
fact.
My point is that you listen to the voice of your people, as it were.
Okay. I hear that. Chief Justice says, I'm not going anywhere. Keep dreaming, is what he said. He said, I'm not going anywhere. That's it. I want to stay in this area. So you don't see a problem. You don't see a crisis in the Judicial Legal Services Commission. You don't see a problem there.
No,
because
the only problem is there has been a call for Mr. Archie and the entire, and I agree with that at that time, and still do, should resign. And he said he's not going.
Here's my question for you. When we speak of the membership of the Law Association, part of the problem that they objected to is because there were two former Chief Justices and the JLSC, correct? Was that not noticed before?
Well, what? As I said, I was here discussing that before, and I had said, it was passing strange that the defect in the composition had been unnoticed and had only been noticed by a judge who was appointed under that same defective thing. As I said, I hold no brief for anyone. I call it as I see it.
I know, that's why I ask you here all the time.
And the thing about it is that our people must stop hiding in ignorance that they call upon themselves. They can appraise themselves of everything, but they choose not to because it is easier. And that is why we have the UNC and the PNM, who really are two sides of the same coin.
All right, I got that. I'm gonna hold you over for a little while longer, and because we've got some documents that were unsealed last Wednesday.
Right.
It revealed a civil suit filed in the Supreme Court on June 28th.
Yes.
The issue here, of course, why the value of a property purchased by the HDC increased by more than $100 million. Allegations of a $50,000 bribe being paid to a public servant to inflate the value of a 50-acre parcel of land were also raised in the lawsuit. Now, charges are levied against 10 persons And this morning, it is reported this morning that the former Minister of Housing said it is a witch hunt. My guest is Attorney Rekha Ramjit and also leader of the ILP. I did say we have a number of topics to discuss, including this one. Documents unsealed. I'm going to just bring it back so you know what we're talking about. Documents unsealed last Wednesday reveal a civil suit filed in the Supreme Court. It was filed on June 28th. At issue is why the value of a property purchased by the HDC increased more than $100 million. Allegations of a $50,000 bribe being paid to a public servant to inflate the value of the 50-acre parcel of land were also raised in the lawsuit. Charges are levied against 10 persons, including former members of the HDC, for the purchase of land known as Eden Gardens in Freeport, which in 2004, get this, was purchased for $17 million. After infrastructural work was done, it was estimated in 2011 at $52 million, but it was sold to the HDC for a great discount of $175 million. I am just lost, Attorney Ramjit. What do you make of this?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to comment on the merits of the case or demerits of the case because that is sub judice. But I just want to correct you. The first time, the selling price was $17 million. The gentleman who owned it got $2 million.
Oh, yes.
The deal was rescinded. He got back his $2 million and then he sold it for $5 million.
That's right.
Just to put things into perspective.
Yes, you're quite right. You're quite right. I misread
After
my copy
infrastructural works, according to the newspaper report, it was valued at $52 million by a very reputable valuation firm and somebody I know personally and would have worked with. He's also an attorney at law, Lyndon Scott and Associates. So this is what you truly call an independent valuation. And then you had persons, valuators, the government valuators, who normally go below outside valuators, valuing it for $180 million, not 175, 180 million, which is, let's do the math, 138 million more. So Mr. Munilal, Dr. Munilal, was the one who took the cabinet note to cabinet. And he said, hey, we got $5 million discount.
A discount, yes.
We can now pay $175 million, which is, people listen, $123 million more than the Lyndon Scott valuation. But what you must look at is the timing. Could when Mr. Lyndon Scott, when Scott and Associates valued it for $52 million in 2011, could the land have increased in value by $123 million less than a year later? Obviously not. So for those who want to throw red herrings in and say, well, it's different times, so the value may have increased, we've struck that out, right? Then Dr. Munilal says, in his own style, of course, that the valuator don't know the difference between bushland and developed land. Bushland and developed land. That is what he is saying is the reason for it. So in other words, he is attacking the integrity of Lyndon Scott and Associates, right? As I said, whose valuations are accepted by the courts of Trinidad and Tobago to say that Lyndon Scott and Associates don't know the difference between bushland and developed land. That's what he's saying, eh? So that's the first attack that he's doing. Then he comes on to say that this is a detraction from the Marlene McDonald issue. He calls it a distraction. And the third thing he says, right, and I don't know why he's making that connection at all, because the two things are absolutely different. Then he says this is a political witch hunt.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Right. But everything, I hold no brief for the PNM and the UNC, you know. Mr. Bishop, every time I sit down at a radio station, people call in or they say afterwards, oh, you are a UNC supporter or you are a PNM supporter, because I happen to agree or disagree with one side. But I am going to call the shots as I see it. Every single thing that the PNM do, he cries. Mr. Munilal and his cohorts cry corruption. Yes? The PNM rode into power on the issue of corruption, and they promised this country they are going to do something. I am happy they've started. But here what my concern is, and they have a right to investigate it, because on the face of it, to the ordinary man in the street, it does not sound right at all. So they have a right to do so. They have a right to ask why Ross, who is employed by the government on Trinidad and Tobago, what he's doing with a $50,000 check. They have a right to ask that. And they have a right to ask if all the members of that board of directors were acting in the best interest of Trinidad and Tobago when they approved this.
Because,
and they have a right to ask whether Dr. Munilal, as the minister in charge, ought not to have properly investigated that cabinet note before he took it for approval. They have a right to ask that, because that is what we are supposed to do. My concern about the PNM, however, I'm not going to leave this. The PNM know, because it was in the public domain, of many, many issues where there were allegations of corruption by the members of the UNC government, the People's Partnership government. And it seems to me that election was in 2015, yes? We are to the second year of a 5-year term, and beginning to scrape the surface.
Let me not ask you this. You, as yourself, as a criminal attorney, know that sometimes gathering information can take a very long time. Are you saying this is an inordinate amount of time? You're saying that there is enough of a paper trail there that they should have gone through and done something about this already?
Right. But Mr. Bishop, they didn't come on what date was election? 15th of September. They didn't come on the 16th of September and now start to investigate this, We pretend that they now come to know on the 16th of September. They didn't. They knew about it before, and the paper trail was there. Here what my problem is. My problem is they are deliberately delaying these investigations and bringing people to answer nearer the end of the 5-year term so that they can get good political mileage. And when they do that, if it is not completed and if they happen to lose election, then we back to square one with the UNC. So do it from the first day. You promised you're going to do it from the first day you get into government. So do it. Here's what I want to do. All of these people, Dr. Munilal, the attorneys who allegedly got millions of dollars, all of these people who one time Jack Warner had said Dr. Munilal didn't have money to buy 2 doubles and a red solo before he came into government. I just repeated what he said. I don't know the man, right? But people whose bank accounts went way high up. What I want to know is, are they not required to file income tax form?
And that is why I cannot wait for the BIR to come in place.
So
that is why I know that there were major objections to FATCA. That is why I know there are major objections. I'm not saying that it is only directed at any one group, but I know that is why we have the problem with the property tax, because the transparency involved in that is going to put a lot of names up there, and you're going to ask the question, well, when did you work to get this money?
Exactly. Why are they not asking them and it's a easy connection. Attorney General, Solicitor General pay out checks. Get all the money that was paid to A, B, and C, and then look at A, B, and C income tax form and ask them what happened to the difference. Because here, what the difference? They probably had to pay taxes to somebody else. That's why the whole difference didn't appear for them. I hope you understand.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Right. So my point is that it is too little at this point in time, and I pray that the PNM is not delaying it for political mileage to the extent which if they don't find themselves in power, the ball will be dropped.
Do you not agree that you also have to have audits in order to find, you've got to have financial audits in order to find the discrepancies and to have the smoking gun, as it were? That too takes time, does it not?
But excuse me, audits are supposed to be done every year.
Well, and we know from every report we have heard is that audits are not provided. We've had repeated complaints coming from the Auditor General in that area.
You realize that we are one of the countries named as one of the highest rates of corruption. So it pervades every single area and institution. And that is why we had been saying in the ILP, and for the first time I would have mentioned the ILP's position in any of your programs, that what any government need to do, whether it is the PNM or the UNC, is to establish an independent group, forensic audit group. Perhaps now use your money to pay an independent group of people who are likely to be part of the corruption to do the investigation. But I have to ask, why is the Commissioner of Inland Revenue not asking these questions about these? People who earning $200,000-$300,000, they'll come and audit them every so often. But you never hear of an audit of somebody who has billions of dollars.
Too many zeros.
Probably. It's beyond their imagination. They can't count it. You understand? So my problem is, I am happy that the investigations have started. Yes. I am not happy with how far they've reached with the number of the investigations that ought to be undertaken at this point in time. That 34 million, that particular one with the live sport program. I mean, even during the UNCD, the People's Partnership Day, the man had said since then, I am paying back a cent. That is since 2015, 2014. The gentleman and it wasn't 34 million. They're reporting it wrongly. It's 36 million. Yes? Even then, why is it 2 years? It took you 2 years to do something about that?
Well, I am one of those that go, I understand everything you have said, and I have no basis to disagree with your view or to agree with it, merely to say that I like to have the patience of Job. Yes. I like to wait. I don't like a case when you make a move on culprits and then you have to free them because of a technicality or because you overlook something. I want every I dotted. I want every T crossed. And when you say I'm bringing the charge, I want you to take it, because I do not think the issue here, in my view, for instance, is the $50,000 bribe singularly.
No, it is not.
I think I'm opening the door onto a couple of other people.
Yes, it is. To me, that is the least of the issues.
Exactly.
But I want to disagree with you on one thing. You have people dedicated to doing these investigations. So it should never take you 2 years. Gotcha. Because as I said, yes, it's good to have the patience of Job. Get all your I's dotted and T's crossed if that is necessary. But when you take that long, and remember, what we are going after is corruption by government ministers. And in the next 5 years, when that change, and if that change, and you have persons in power who are being investigated, what do you think will happen to those investigations?
Deja vu.
Exactly. Sometimes you need to take the risk. And let me tell you something else about cases. There's nothing that says that if I file a claim today, that I cannot amend it. There's nothing that says that during the course of a trial, a criminal trial, you cannot get further disclosure. There's not, as a matter of fact, let me tell you, in Trinidad and Tobago, an investigation in a criminal matter can go on even during the trial. An investigation doesn't have to cease. So you can start the investigation today, you can charge one person, and as you go along and evidence reveals itself, you can charge other people. And I want to tell you something else. In a civil matter, during the course of the trial, if there's evidence that a criminal offense has taken place, the judge has the power to ensure that something is done about that. So there is no excuse that you wait until the very last moment to file a matter like this. There is no excuse whatsoever, in my humble opinion, of course.
Humble opinion is very much welcomed, and for that I thank you. I just feel somebody opened the spigot upstairs and the main is going to start flowing real soon. At least I'm optimistic that it will. Attorney Rekha Ramjit and head of the ILP, again, thank you so much for taking your time this Sunday morning.
Always my pleasure.
Your clarity is always appreciated.